I am Jarvis, your storyteller. Welcome to the Science Fiction Exploration. If you like the story, please subscribe to our channel.
Ambassador Elena Reyes stood at the reinforced windows of the human embassy on Nexus Prime, watching the seething crowd of Kralaxians below. Their scaled bodies reflected the harsh afternoon sunlight, making the mob look like a writhing sea of copper and gold. Behind her, Major Jian Chen of the Embassy Marine Guard maintained his characteristic stoic expression, but his fingers never strayed far from his pulse rifle. "How many?" Elena asked, not turning away from the window. 2,000 outside, growing by the hour, Chen replied. Local authorities are maintaining a perimeter, but their sympathies lie with the crowd. Elena nodded, her silver-streaked black hair catching the light. 20 years in the diplomatic corps had taught her to read between the lines. The Kralaxian security forces weren't there to protect the embassy, they were there to prevent the Viridian refugees from escaping. "Ambassador," her AI assistant Prometheus chimed in, "the Kralaxian High Minister is requesting another audience. This marks their 7th attempt in the past 3 hours." Elena allowed herself a small smile. "Let them wait. The moment we open negotiations is the moment we admit there's something to negotiate." She turned to face the secure conference room where 12 Viridian refugees huddled, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing with anxiety. "Our guests have rights under the Galactic asylum protocols. We're not going to abandon them to a show trial and execution." Major Chen shifted his weight, the only tell in his otherwise perfect military bearing. "Ma'am, the Kralaxians are bringing in heavy weapons. Military-grade gravitic cannons. They're positioning them under the guise of crowd control." "Record everything," Elena ordered. "Every violation of diplomatic protocols, every military asset they deploy. Prometheus, make sure our feeds to Earth are getting through. Continuous transmission maintained through quantum channels, Ambassador. The UES Vigilant acknowledges receipt of all data packets." The building shuddered as something heavy impacted the shields. Elena didn't flinch. The embassy's defenses could withstand orbital bombardment if necessary. A few rocks and improvised explosives weren't going to breach them. One of the Viridians, their leader Zex Li, approached Elena. Their translucent skin rippled with patterns of blue and green, concern and gratitude, according to the xenobiologist's charts. "Ambassador, we cannot express sufficient appreciation for your protection. But perhaps the cost is too high. We did not intend to create an interstellar incident." Elena turned to face the alien refugee, her expression softening. "Minister Zex Li, humanity has learned the hard way what happens when good people stay silent in the face of injustice. The Kralaxians may call this internal affairs, but genocide is genocide, regardless of who commits it or why." Another impact rocked the building. Major Chen's squad shifted positions, their movements precise and practiced. The Marines might look decorative in their dress uniforms, but they were combat veterans to a person. Elena had hand-picked them herself. "Prometheus, status update on the Vigilant?" "Captain Zhang reports they're maintaining position just outside the system's gravity well. 5 hours at maximum burn if intervention becomes necessary." Elena nodded. The presence of a human warship would usually be enough to make most species think twice. But the Kralaxians were proud, and they had the backing of several other races who viewed humanity's rapid rise to power with suspicion and fear. The crowd's roar suddenly increased in volume. Elena returned to the window to see a new figure addressing the mob, High Minister Kralvax himself, his scales gleaming with ceremonial oils. His amplified voice boomed across the plaza. "The humans harbor criminals and spies. They mock our sovereignty. How long will we allow these upstart apes to dictate terms to us in our own territory?" "Well," Elena murmured, "I suppose that answers the question of whether we can resolve this diplomatically." She straightened her uniform jacket and turned to Major Chen. "Major, implement contingency protocol Delta." And get me a direct line to Admiral Santos of the 7th Fleet. Chen's eyes widened slightly, the only indication of surprise he allowed himself. The 7th Fleet, ma'am? That's quite an escalation. Elena's smile was razor-sharp. The Kralaxians want to play brinksmanship? Fine. Let's show them what that really means. Humanity didn't fight its way to the stars by backing down when bullies made threats. The building shook again, but this time Elena barely noticed. She was already composing her message to Fleet Command. The Kralaxians were about to learn why the human diplomatic corps had earned the nickname Velvet Glove, because behind every ambassador stood the iron fist of the United Earth Navy, ready to remind the galaxy that humanity's commitment to peace was matched only by its capability for war. Prometheus, send to all stations, Diplomatic Resolution Protocol 7 Alpha. Authorization Reyes 7749 Echo Charlie. She paused, making sure her next words would be recorded for posterity. Let the record show that the Kralaxian Empire has chosen to violate multiple articles of the Galactic Compact. We will respond accordingly. As if in answer, the sky above Nexus Prime lit up with the arrival of multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. The 7th Fleet had arrived early. Humanity's biggest stick was about to remind everyone why Earth's diplomatic corps always got the last word. Captain Marcus Zhang stood on the bridge of the UES Vigilant, watching tactical displays track the arrival of the 7th Fleet's vessels. Each ship materialized like a new star being born, their quantum signatures announcing humanity's presence with unmistakable clarity. The Kralaxian Defense Fleet's formations were already shifting, their vessels attempting to maintain a semblance of defensive posture while clearly being overwhelmed by the sheer firepower suddenly present in their system. Status report, Zhang ordered, his voice carrying the calm authority that had earned him command of one of humanity's most advanced warships. Lieutenant Rivera's fingers danced across her tactical console. 27 Kralaxian warships have broken orbit, sir. They're attempting to establish a blockade formation between us and Nexus Prime. Admiral Santos's flagship, the Thunderchild, is requesting priority channel. Put her through. Zhang straightened his uniform, though he knew the gesture was unnecessary for a holographic communication. Admiral Dahlia Santos's image materialized on the bridge, her dark eyes carrying the weight of decades of command experience. Captain Zhang, I trust you've been keeping my favorite diplomatic powder keg warm for me? Yes, Admiral. Ambassador Reyes has maintained a defensive posture while documenting multiple violations of the Galactic Compact. The Kralaxians have deployed military-grade weapons against a diplomatic installation. Of course they have. Santos's smile held no warmth. Status of the embassy shields? Holding at 97%. The Kralaxians are still pretending their gravitic cannons are for crowd control, but they've been steadily increasing power output. Our analysis suggests they're testing for resonance frequencies. On the tactical display, the Kralaxian fleet continued its clumsy attempt at intimidation. Their ships were impressive by most standards, but humanity had long since surpassed what most species considered impressive. Sir, Lieutenant Rivera interrupted, we're receiving a transmission from the Kralaxian flagship. High Admiral Vexthor is demanding we withdraw from the system immediately. Zhang exchanged glances with Santos's hologram. The Admiral nodded slightly. Put him through, Lieutenant. Let's hear what passes for diplomacy in the Kralaxian military. The holographic space shifted to accommodate a new figure, a towering Kralaxian male whose scales bore the deep copper hue of their warrior caste. This is High Admiral Vexthor of the Imperial Kralaxian Defense Force. You are in violation of sovereign space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences of your aggression. Zhang kept his expression neutral. High Admiral, this is Captain Marcus Zhang of the UES Vigilant. We are here in response to documented violations of the Galactic Compact, specifically Articles 7, 13, and 24 regarding the treatment of diplomatic installations and asylum seekers. We will withdraw when the Kralaxian Empire remembers its obligations under interstellar law. Laws? Vexthor's scales rippled with barely contained rage. You speak of laws while harboring terrorists and spies? The Viridians are enemies of the state. Their execution has been ordered by the highest authorities. The Viridians, Admiral Santos cut in, her voice carrying the authority of her rank, are under human protection. They have requested asylum under the compact, and that request has been granted. This is not a negotiation, High Admiral. This is a courtesy notification. The Kralaxian's face contorted. You dare? Humanity is not so powerful that it can ignore the will of the combined species of this sector. The Jakari Confederation stands with us. The Nexus Conclave supports our right to internal security. If you persist in this foolishness, you risk more than just our wrath. Zhang watched as Santos's expression shifted subtly, the look of someone who had just been handed exactly what they wanted. Thank you, High Admiral, for that admission of conspiracy against a recognized diplomatic mission. Prometheus, please ensure that confession is properly logged and transmitted to the Galactic Council. The AI's voice was almost cheerful. Already done, Admiral. The Galactic Council's administrative AI confirms receipt of the evidence package. Vexthor's scales lost their luster as he realized his mistake. In his anger, he had just implicated multiple species in a plot against a protected diplomatic installation. The Galactic Compact took such violations very seriously, especially when the evidence was this clear. Now then, Santos continued, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of human military tradition, shall we discuss the terms of your immediate withdrawal from Embassy airspace? Or would you prefer to explain to your allies why their fleets should risk engagement with the 7th Fleet over your violation of interstellar law? The tactical display showed the Kralaxian ships already beginning to drift back, their formation losing coherence. They had expected to intimidate the humans with a show of force. Instead, they had walked into a carefully laid trap. Captain Zhang, Santos ordered, deploy the Vigilance ground teams to reinforce the embassy. I want a full company of Marines on the ground within the hour. Let's show our Kralaxian friends what a proper security detail looks like. Yes, Admiral. Zhang turned to his crew. You heard the Admiral. Let's remind everyone why humanity's diplomatic corps never has to make empty threats. As the bridge crew sprang into action, Zhang allowed himself a small smile. The Kralaxians had made the same mistake so many species made when dealing with humanity. They assumed that because humans preferred diplomacy, they had forgotten how to fight. They were about to learn why Earth's motto had become, peace through preparedness. And if the Kralaxians and their allies didn't learn from this lesson, humanity was more than prepared to teach them another. The dropships descended through Nexus Prime's atmosphere like arrows of light, their stealth systems doing nothing to hide their presence. They weren't meant to. Admiral Santos wanted everyone to see the Marines coming. The message was clear, humanity had arrived in force. Inside the lead dropship, Sergeant First Class Rajesh Patel checked his squad's equipment one final time. The powered armor they wore was humanity's latest generation of combat suits, each one worth more than a small starship. The Kralaxians were about to learn why human Marines were considered the galaxy's elite infantry. 2 minutes to touchdown, the pilot announced. Ambassador Reyes reports the shield wall is ready for our arrival. Through the dropship's viewport, Patel could see the embassy plaza. The angry mob had transformed into an orderly withdrawal as Kralaxian security forces hurried civilians away from the landing zone. Nobody wanted to be caught between human Marines and their objective. The instant the dropship touched down, Patel's squad moved with practiced precision. They secured the landing zone while additional dropships delivered their cargo of Marines and equipment. Within minutes, a fortified perimeter had been established around the embassy. Inside, Ambassador Reyes was meeting with the Viridian refugees and Admiral Santos's holographic projection. The atmosphere had shifted from tense anticipation to focused determination. "Now then," Santos addressed Zex Lee, "I believe it's time you told us what the Kralaxians are really after. No one commits this many resources to capturing 12 refugees unless there's something more at stake." Zex Lee's bioluminescent patterns shifted through complex patterns before settling into a steady pulse. "You are correct, Admiral. We carry information that could destabilize not just the Kralaxian Empire, but the entire power structure of this sector." The Viridian produced a quantum storage device, its crystalline structure catching the light. This contains proof that the Kralaxian Empire, along with the Jakari Confederation and the Nexus Conclave, have been violating the non-interference protocols. They've been uplifting pre-FTL species and enslaving them, creating hidden colonies of worker races to fuel their economies. Elena Reyes felt her blood run cold. The non-interference protocols were one of the foundational treaties of galactic civilization. They existed to protect developing species from exploitation. Humanity had insisted on their strict enforcement after achieving FTL travel, remembering too well how close they had come to destroying themselves before reaching the stars. The Viridian Science Council discovered this by accident, Zex Lee continued. "We were tracking quantum anomalies when we detected artificial wormholes being used to transport entire populations. When we investigated further, we found dozens of enslaved species, their histories erased, their cultures destroyed." Admiral Santos's hologram showed the first hint of emotion, a tightening around her eyes that suggested carefully controlled anger. "You have proof? Documentation that would stand up to Galactic Council scrutiny?" "Better," another Viridian named Ixil stepped forward. "We have coordinates. Ship logs. Genetic samples. And most importantly, we have the quantum key codes they use to access their hidden transportation network. That's why they want us so badly. That's why they're willing to risk war with humanity to silence us." Elena exchanged glances with Santos. This wasn't just a diplomatic crisis anymore. This was the kind of revelation that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. No wonder the Kralaxians had been willing to deploy military forces against an embassy. "Major Chen," Elena called out. "Please escort our guests to the secure communication center. It's time we transmitted everything to Earth Command." But before Chen could move, the embassy's AI issued an urgent alert. Multiple quantum signatures detected. Large-scale fleet movements in progress. Admiral Santos's hologram flickered as she received the same information. The Jakari Confederation is mobilizing their home fleet. The Nexus Conclave has just activated their defense grid. They're not going to let this evidence reach the Galactic Council without a fight. Elena straightened her uniform. "Then I suggest we give them one they'll never forget. Humanity didn't become a power in this galaxy by backing down from bullies." "Agreed." Santos's expression was grim but determined. "Captain Zhang, begin emergency evacuation procedures. Get the Viridians and their evidence to the Vigilant. Ambassador Reyes, you have 90 seconds to formally notify Earth Command that we are now in a state of war with the Kralaxian Empire and its allies." "And after that?" Major Chen asked, his pulse rifle humming as it charged. Admiral Santos's smile was cold as space itself. "After that, we remind everyone why humanity's motto isn't just peace through preparedness but also victory through overwhelming response. The 7th Fleet didn't come alone. The 3rd, 5th, and 9th Fleets are already in transit. If they want to test humanity's resolve, they're about to learn why we've never lost a war among the stars." As if to punctuate her words, the sky above Nexus Prime lit up with new quantum signatures. The battle for truth and justice was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy exactly why no one should ever mistake their preference for peace as a sign of weakness. The UES Vigilance Command Center had been transformed into a war room. Holographic displays showed fleet movements across 3 sectors of space as Captain Zhang coordinated with Admiral Santos and the incoming reinforcements. The Viridian refugees worked alongside human analysts, decoding the quantum storage device's contents. Another colony discovered, Ixil announced, their bioluminescence flickering with distress. A species called the Nix. Pre-industrial civilization when they were taken. Current population in forced labor, approximately 8 million. Commander Olivia Durand, the Vigilance Intelligence Officer, added another marker to the holographic map. That makes 27 enslaved species so far. The Kralaxians and their allies have built an entire shadow empire on illegal labor. The ship shuddered as another wave of quantum torpedoes impacted their shields. The Jakari fleet had arrived first, testing the 7th Fleet's defenses while waiting for their allies. So far, humanity's technology had proven superior, but the enemy's numbers were growing. Admiral Zhang reported, the Nexus Conclave's main battle group has just emerged from hyperspace. They're attempting to establish a blockade between us and the quantum corridor to Earth. Santos's hologram nodded grimly. As expected. They're trying to prevent us from transmitting the evidence to the Galactic Council. Status of the quantum entanglement transmitter? Still charging, Admiral. The Kralaxians' jamming field is strong, but Lieutenant Rivera has found a way to bypass it. We need another 17 minutes. A new alarm blared through the command center. On the tactical display, hundreds of new contacts appeared. The Kralaxian Empire had committed their entire home fleet to the battle. They're desperate, Commander Durand observed. They know that if this evidence gets out, their entire civilization will collapse. The sanctions alone would cripple their economy. Zexley approached the central holodable, their natural glow dimmed by exhaustion. There's more. We've decrypted another layer of data. The Viridians' hands trembled as they interfaced with the human systems. The enslaved species, they're not just being used for labor. The Kralaxians and their allies are experimenting on them. Trying to engineer better soldiers, more efficient workers. They're treating sentient beings like laboratory specimens. The command center fell silent as the new information appeared on the displays. Medical data, genetic sequences, mortality rates, the scope of the atrocities was staggering. Captain Zhang felt his jaw clench as he studied the figures. Admiral, he said quietly, request permission to transmit this data on all frequencies, not just to the Council. Every species in the galaxy should see what they've done. Belay that, Captain. Admiral Santos's voice was steel. We do this by the book. The Galactic Council needs to receive this evidence through proper channels, or the Kralaxians could claim we fabricated it for propaganda purposes. Another impact rocked the ship. Lieutenant Rivera's voice came over the comm, multiple boarding attempts detected. Marine teams are responding, but they're getting creative with their quantum tunneling technology. Zhang turned to Commander Durand. Get our guests to the secure core. If they breach the hull, I want the Viridians and their evidence as far from the fighting as possible. Too late for that, a new voice announced. The tactical display shifted to show dozens of new quantum signatures. The Nexus Conclave's infamous Shadow Fleet had arrived, ships so heavily modified they barely registered on normal sensors. But Admiral Santos was smiling. Right on schedule. Captain Zhang, authorize Command Protocol Omega-7. Recognition phrase, humanity remembers its debts. The words had barely left her mouth when space itself seemed to tear open. Where there had been empty void, there was suddenly a wall of human warships, the combined might of the 3rd, 5th, and 9th fleets, led by the newest vessel in humanity's arsenal, the UES Retribution. You see, Santos addressed the command center, we suspected something like this was happening. The Viridians weren't the first to notice the disappearing civilizations. Earth's intelligence services had been gathering evidence for months. We just needed proof that could stand up in the council's courts. Zhang understood immediately. We didn't just stumble into this crisis. You used the embassy situation to draw them out. Indeed. Santos's hologram grew larger, addressing everyone present. Humanity has been accused of being too aggressive, too ready for war. But we remember our own history. We remember what happens when good people stay silent in the face of atrocity. The Kralaxians and their allies thought they could build an empire on slavery and suffering. Today, they learn why humanity's diplomatic corps carries such big sticks. The tactical display updated as the human fleets moved into attack formation. They had positioned themselves perfectly, cutting off every escape route, every possible avenue of retreat. Send word to all enemy vessels, Santos ordered. They have one chance to power down their weapons and prepare for boarding. After that. She paused, making sure her next words would be recorded for history. After that, we show them exactly why humanity's mercy should never be mistaken for weakness. As the ultimatum was transmitted, Captain Zhang watched the enemy fleet's formations begin to waver. They had expected to face one human battle group. Instead, they had walked into carefully laid trap, sprung by a species that had learned the hard way that evil triumphs only when good people fail to act. The game was over. Now it was time for justice. The next 6 hours redefined galactic politics forever. Across 3 sectors of space, human warships systematically disabled or captured vessels belonging to the Kralaxian Empire and its allies. The enemy's superior numbers meant nothing against humanity's advanced technology and battle-hardened crews. But it wasn't Earth's military might that would be remembered most about this day, it was what came after. Ambassador Elena Reyes stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, her diplomatic uniform pristine despite the recent combat. The council chamber's ancient halls had witnessed countless debates and decisions, but never anything quite like this. The evidence is irrefutable, she declared, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. 27 species enslaved. Millions subjected to illegal genetic experimentation. An entire shadow economy built on suffering and violation of our most sacred laws. The quantum recordings played behind her, showing scenes that made even the most hardened council members flinch. Labor camps stretching across hidden worlds. Laboratories where sentient beings were treated like test subjects. Generation ships converted into prison transports. But humanity's response will not be what our enemies expect, Elena continued. We could demand reparations that would bankrupt 3 civilizations. We could impose sanctions that would last centuries. Instead, we choose a different path. Admiral Santos stepped forward, her dress uniform gleaming under the council chamber's lights. The United Earth Navy has already begun liberating the slave worlds. Our medical ships are treating the victims. Our engineers are dismantling the labor camps. But this is not enough. The chamber erupted in murmurs as humans and aliens alike exchanged glances. Everyone had expected Earth to demand the harshest possible punishments for the perpetrators. Humanity remembers its own history, Elena's voice cut through the noise. We remember how hatred breeds hatred, how punishment without purpose leads only to more conflict. Therefore, we propose the Redemption Initiative. Holographic displays showed new images, humanitarian aid ships, medical facilities, education centers. The guilty will face justice, Elena continued, but their civilizations will not be destroyed. Instead, they will help us rebuild what they tried to destroy. Every credit they earned from slavery will be used to restore the worlds they damaged. Every scientific advancement they gained through illegal experimentation will be used to heal their victims. And to ensure this never happens again, Santos added, Earth will establish permanent bases in the affected regions. Our fleets will patrol the quantum corridors. Our diplomats will work with local governments to establish new protocols for protecting developing civilizations. The council chamber was silent now, every being present understanding the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Humanity had been handed the perfect excuse to dominate three rival civilizations, and had chosen restoration over retribution. Let today be remembered not just as the day we exposed great evil, Elena declared, but as the day we proved that justice and mercy can coexist. That strength lies not just in the ability to win wars, but in the wisdom to prevent them. One by one, the council members began to signal their approval. Even representatives from neutral worlds who had long viewed Earth with suspicion found themselves supporting the human proposal. Back on the UES Vigilant, Captain Zhang watched the proceedings with his crew and their Viridian guests. Zexley's bioluminescence pulsed with patterns that the translators identified as awe and gratitude. "We thought you would destroy them," the Viridian admitted. "Your ships, your weapons, you could have reduced their worlds to ash." "That's precisely why we won't," Zhang replied. "Humanity learned long ago that having the power to do something doesn't mean you should. True strength lies in knowing when not to use it." As if to emphasize his words, the tactical displays showed human ships across the sector transitioning from combat to humanitarian operations. Marines who hours ago had been storming enemy vessels were now distributing medical supplies and food to the liberated slaves. Besides, Commander Durand added with a smile, "Nothing terrifies potential enemies quite like showing them that you could crush them, and choosing not to. The message we're sending today will echo through the galaxy for generations." The quantum communications network was already buzzing with the news. Humanity had proven itself not just as a military power, but as a force for justice and reconstruction. The Galactic Council was reorganizing itself to prevent future atrocities. The liberated species were being offered membership in a new coalition under Earth's protection. In the end, the Kralaxians and their allies had feared that humanity would prove too aggressive, too prone to violence. Instead, they had discovered something far more profound, a species that had learned from its own bloody history, that understood the true price of both war and peace. The end.